All right. Chapter 23. Melbourne, age January  21st, 1869. There was a carter. He was driving a 5-horse truck along the bed of a dry creek. Down the gully shot a watery fist that was knuckled with boulders. A dead man, a truck, and 5 horses were punched into trees. New Orleans Daily Picayune, August 6, 1893. A woman in a carriage crossing a dried up stream in Rawlins County, Kansas. It was a quiet, summery scene. There was a rush of water. The carriage crumbled. There was a spill of crumbs that were a woman's hat and the heads of horses. Philadelphia Public Ledger, September 16, 1893. People asleep in the town of Villacanas, Toledo, Spain. The town was raided by trees. Trees smashed through the walls of houses. People in bed were grabbed by roots. A deluge had fallen into a forest. Bright, clear day near Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. From the sky swooped a wrath that incited a river. It was one bulk of water. 2 miles away, no rain fell. A raging river jeered against former confinement. Some of its gibes were freight cars. It scoffed with bridges. Having made a high-water mark of rebellion, it subsided into a petulance of jostling rowboats. Monastically, I have to accept that no line of demarcation can be drawn between emotions of minds and motions of rivers. These sudden, astonishing leaks from the heavens are not understood. Meteorologists study them meteorologically. This seems logical and is therefore under suspicion. This is the fallacy of the sciences. Scientists are scientific. They are inorganically scientific. Someday they may be organic science, or the interpretation of all phenomenal things in terms of an organism that comprises all. If our existence is an organism in which all phenomena are continuous, dreams cannot be utterly different in the view of continuity from occurrences that are said to be real. Sometimes in a nightmare, a kitten turns into a dragon. Louth, Lincolnshire, England, May 29, 1920. The River Lud, which is only a brook and is known as Tennyson's Brook, was babbling, or maybe it was purling. Out of its play, this little thing humped itself 20 feet high. A ferocious transformation of a brook sprang upon the houses of Louth and mangled 50 of them. Later in the day, between banks upon which were piled the remains of houses in which were lying 22 bodies, and from which hundreds of the inhabitants had been driven homeless, the little brook was babbling or purling. Scientific publications early in the year 1880, an event was told of in the usual scientific way. That is, as if it were a thing in itself. It was said that a waterspout had burst upon the island of St. Kitts, BWI. A bulk of water had struck this island, splitting it into cracks, carrying away houses and people, drowning 250 of the inhabitants. A paw of water clawed with chasms had grabbed these people. In accordance with our general treatments, we think that there are waterspouts and cloudbursts, but the waterspout and cloudburst conveniences arise when nothing else can, or rather should, be thought of, and as labels are stuck on events that cannot be so classified except as a matter of scientific decorum and laziness. Some of the sleek, plump sciences are models of good behavior and inactivity because, with little else to do, they sit all day on the backs of patient fishmongers. As a monist, I think that there is something meteorological about us. Out of the libraries will come wraths of data, and we too shall jeer against former confinements. Our gibes will be events, and we shall scoff with catastrophes. The waterspout of St. Kitts, as if it were a single thing, unrelated to anything else. The West Indian, February 3rd, 1880. That, while the bulk that was called a waterspout was overwhelming St. Kitts, water was falling upon the island of Grenada, as it had never rained before in the history of the island. Grenada is 300 miles from St. Kitts. I take data of another occurrence from the Dominican, The People, published at Roseau, Dominica, BWI. About 11 o'clock morning of January 4th, the town of Roseau was bumped by a midnight. People in the streets were attacked by darkness. People in houses heard the smash of their windows. Out of there. Where was it? Panes. Night fell so heavily that it broke roofs. It was a daytime night of falling mud. With the mud came a deluge. The river Rosu rose, and there was a conflict. The river, armed with the detachables of an island, held up shields of mules and pierced the savage darkness with spears of goats. Long lines of these things it flung through the black streets of Rosu. In the Boiling Lakes district of Dominica, there had been an eruption of mud at the time of the deluge, which was like the fall of water upon St. Kitts 8 days later. There had, in recorded time, never been an eruption here before. 3 months before, there had been in another part of the West Indies a catastrophe like that of St. Kitts upon October 10th, 1879. A deluge fell upon the island of Jamaica and drowned 100 of the inhabitants. A flood that slid out from this island was surfaced with jungles, tangles of mahogany logs, trees, and bushes, brambled with the horns of goats and cattle, hung with a moss of the fleece of sheep. Incoming vessels plowed furrows as if in a passing cultivation of one of the rankest luxuriances that ever vegetated upon an ocean. Passengers looked at tangles of trees and bodies as if at picture puzzles. In foliage, they saw faces. For months, there had been in the provinces of Murcia and Alicante, Spain, a drought so severe that inhabitants had been driven into immigration to Algeria. Whether we think of this drought as the prayers of the people as having relation or not, there came a downpour that was as intense as the necessities. See London Times, October 20th, 1879. Upon October 14th, floods poured upon the parched provinces. Perhaps it was response to the prayers of the people. 5 villages were destroyed. 1,500 persons perished. Virtually in the same zone with Spain and the West Indies, a deluge fell in December. The river Cauca rose beyond all former high water marks so suddenly that people were trapped in their houses. This was upon December 19th. Excuse me. The next day, the earth started quaking in Salvador near Lake Penga. This lake was the crater of what was supposed to be an extinct volcano. I take data from the Panama Daily Star and Herald, February 10th, 1880. Upon the 31st of December, 4 days before occurrences in the island of Dominica, the earth quaked in Salvador, and from the middle of the lake Penga emerged a rocky formation. Water fell from the sky in bulks that gouged gullies. Gullies writhed in the quaking ground. The inhabitants who cried to the heavens prayed to epilepsy. Mud was falling upon the convulsions. A volcanic island was rising in Lake Penga, displacing the water, and streams that writhed from it violently. Rise of a form that filled the lake. It shook out black torrents, head of a gorgon, shaggy with snakes. Beginning upon October 10th and continuing until the occurrence at St. Kitts, deluge after deluge came down to one zone around this earth, or a flight of lakes was cast from a constellational reservoir, which was revolving and discharging around a zone of this earth. In the minds of most of us, this could not be. We have been taught to look up at the revolving stars and to see and to think that they do not revolve. Our data are of the slaughters of people who, by fishmongerish explanations, have been held back from an understanding of an irrational irrigational system, of their emotions, and of the elementary emotions of lands. Period. There's a hope in a mind, and it turns to despair. Or there's a fertile region in the materials of South American country, and an unsuspected volcano chars it to a woe of leafless trees, plains, and the promise of crops that are shining in sunlight. Plains crack into disappointments, into which fall expectations. An island appears in the ocean, and after a while, young palms feel upward. There's a convulsive relapse, a subliminal filth from the bottom of the ocean plasters the little aspirations. Quaking lands have classed their fields and have wrung their forests. Each catastrophe has been explained by the metaphysical scientists as a thing in itself. Scientists are contractions of metaphysicians in their local searches for completeness and in their statements that, except for infinitesimal errors, plus or minus completenesses have been found. I can accept that there may be superphenomenal completeness, but not that there can be phenomenal completenesses. It may be that the widespread thought that there is God or allness is only an extension of the deceiving process by which an explanation of a swarm of ladybirds or to a fall of water at St. Kitts is given a guise of completeness. Or it may be the other way around, or that there is a wholeness, perhaps one of countless wholenesses in the cosmos, and that attempting completenesses and attempting concepts of completenesses are localizing consciousness of an all-inclusive state or being. So far as it is known, phenomena are concerned, that is complete. There have been showers of ponds from blue skies. There have been shafts of water, golden in sunshine. Reflections from stars have fluted sudden dark watery columns. There have been violent temples of water, colonnades of shafts revealed against darkness by lightning. Foaming facades as white as marble. Nights have been caves, roofs with vast fluent stalactites. These are sprinkles. March 1913. The meteorologists study meteorologically. The meteorologists were surprised. March 23rd, 1913. 250,000 persons driven from their homes. Torrents falling, rivers rising in Ohio. The floods of Dayton, Ohio were especially disastrous. Traffics of bodies in the watery streets of Dayton. The wind whistles and holds up a cab. They stop. Night and the running streets are hustling bodies, but coming is worse than the sights of former beings who never got anywhere in life and are still hurrying. The wreck of a trolley car speeds down an avenue. Down a side street rushes a dead man. Let him catch the car and he'll get about where all his lifetime he got catching other cars. A final dispatch from Dayton. Dayton in total darkness. March 23rd, 24th, and 25th. A watery sky that sat on the Adirondack Mountains began to slide. It ripped its slants on a peak, and the tops of lampposts disappeared in the streets of Troy and Albany. Literary event at Paterson, New Jersey. Something that was called a great cloudburst grabbed a factory chimney and on a ruled page of streets scrawled a messy message. With the guts of horses and other obscenities, it put in popularizing touches. The list of dead in Columbus, Ohio would probably reach 1,000. Connecticut River rising rapidly. Delaware River at Trenton, New Jersey, 14 feet above normal. March 26th in Parkersburg, West Virginia, people who called on their neighbors rode boats to second-story windows. If they had in their cellars what they have nowadays, there was much demand for divers. New lakes in Vermont and the state of Indiana was an inland sea. Farmers caught napping. Surprises everywhere. Napping everywhere. Wherever science was, there was a swipe at a sleep. Floods in Wisconsin, floods and destruction in Illinois and Missouri. March 27th, see the New York Tribune of the 28th that the Weather Bureau was issuing storm warnings. The professional wise men were not heard from before this deluge. Some of us would like to know what they had to say afterward. They said it in the Monthly Weather Review, April 1913. The story is told completely. The story is told as if there had been exceptional rains only in Ohio and 4 neighboring states. Reading this account, one thinks, as one should think, of considerable or of extraordinary rain in one small region, and of its derivation from other parts of this earth where unusual sunshine had brought about unusual evaporations. Canada, and it was not here that the sun was shining, waters falling and freezing. In Canada, loading trees and telegraph wires with ice, power houses flooded, and towns in darkness. crashes of trees heavy with ice. California was drenched, torrents falling in Washington and Oregon. Unprecedented snow in Texas, New Mexico, and Oklahoma. Alabama deluged. Floods in Florida, Ohio, and 4 neighboring states. Downpours in France and in other parts of Europe. Spain. Seems that near Valencia, one of these nights there was a rotten theatrical performance. Such a fall of big hailstones that a train was stalled. Vast tragedian in a black cloak posing on the funnel of an engine, car windows that were footlights, and disapproval was expressing with the looks of millions of pigeons' eggs. Anyway, near Valencia, a fall of hail 3 feet deep stopped trains. Just where was all that sunshine? South Africa, moving pictures of the low degree of the now old-fashioned cereals, something stage clutching hands. There were watery grabs from the sky at Colesburg, Murraysburg, and Pryska. The volume of one of these bulks equaled 1/10 of the total rainfall in South Africa in 1 year. Snow 2 months before its season was falling in the Andes, floods in Paraguay, and people spreading in panics. Government vessels carrying supplies to homeless, starving people. River Uruguay rising rapidly. Heavy rains in the Fiji Islands. The rains of Tasmania during the month of March were 26 points above the average. Upon the first day of the floods in Ohio and 4 neighboring states, March 22nd, began a series of terrific thunderstorms in Australia. There was a rain blizzard in New South Wales and Queensland. All mails were delayed by floods. New Zealand. Wellington Evening Post, March 31st, the greatest disaster in the history of the colony. Where there had been sluggish rivers, bodies of countless sheep tossed in woolly furries. Maybe there is a vast old being named God, and reported strands of tossing sheep were glimpses of his whiskers in one of those wraths of his. In the towns, there were fantastic savageries. Wherever the floods had been before, it looks as if they had been to college. One of them rioted through the streets of Gore, having broken down store windows. It roistered with the bodies of animals, wrapped in lace curtains, silks, and ribbons. Down the Matura River sounded a torrent of terrible cries. It was a rush of drowning cattle. It was a delirium of brandishing horns upon which invisible collegians were blowing in fanfare. Ohio, and 4 neighboring states. The clip of Paraguay and the bob of New Zealand, the snip of South Africa, and the shearing of everything else that did not fit in with a theory. Whoever said that the pen is mightier than something else overlooked the mightiest of all, and that's the scissors. Wherever all this water was coming from, the full account is of North America and 4 neighboring continents. Peaches flying from orchards in the winds of New Zealand. Icicles clattering in the streets of Montreal. The dripping palms of Paraguay and the pine trees of Oregon were mounds of snow. At night, this earth was a black constellation sounding with panics. I can think of the origin of the ocean that fell upon it, not less the constellational terms, in not less than constellational terms. Perhaps Orion or Taurus went dry. If a place, say in China, greatly needs water, and if there be stores of water somewhere else in one organism, I can think of relations of requital as I think of need and response in any lesser organism or suborganism. Need of a camel, or storages and reliefs, hibernating bear, and supplies from his storages.